You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. I'm your host, Stuart Deloney. Welcome again here for another week at Snarky Faith. So I hope everyone is surviving the holiday season. Hopefully everyone has made it out safely through the war on Christmas. I don't know, because this season is insane. And part of what I want to talk to you guys about this hour is truth, this idea of truth. And what oftentimes happens, especially when you are in and around the Christian world, this whole notion of the word truth comes up over and over. Oh, we've got the truth. The gospel's the truth. This is the truth. This is the truth. Everyone else does not have the truth, but we've got the truth. So we'll be kind of talking around this whole idea of truth and keeping it real this hour on the show, because of course, every other show, we've not been keeping it real. I'm joking. You're listening to a show called Snarky Faith. So get with the picture, folks, if you're not on board already. Here's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to start with a little bit of story time, right? Because we're all in the Christmas spirit, and we all love to think about story time. Telling stories this season is really just a big thing. And I'd recently read an article about a substitute teacher that was fired by a school district because he or she, I'm not sure which it was, but this substitute teacher ended up telling this class of children that Santa was not real. Now, I understand on a certain level why folks had a little bit of outrage around this and kind of, cried party foul on the substitute teacher. But when we get back to the just to the middle of thinking and in this place of just really being able to logically think this through, this substitute teacher was fired for telling kids the truth. Just kind of think about that. So this, and again, I know, in poor taste to go ahead and launch into a bunch of little delusional kids that were believing in Santa would be very disturbing, and the stories he would bring home would make their parents upset, because essentially the substitute teacher was saying, hey, y'all, all your mom and dad, they've been lying to you all these years. I'm not quoting the substitute teacher that did this, but I'm saying that's just the essence of really what came out in the midst of this. And this actually made me think of a story where I did something similar. Now, I've never been a substitute teacher, and I'll paint a very different picture on this. But in order to tell you this story, let me give you a bit of background. First of all, I've been married for almost 20 years. And my wife and I have 4 kids, 4 awesome, amazing kids, because that's what you're contractually obligated to in marriage, to be able to say on the radio. I'm joking. I do. My kids are awesome. I do love them very much. They're cool human beings. And part of us being able to help them or cultivate them in the parental rearing aspect of this, the way that my wife and I have cultivated them into hopefully being cool kids and cool adults came from this. So I'm giving you a bunch of snarky Stuart history here. So my wife and I dated way before we got married. And if I'm telling you that we've been married for almost 20 years, you're going to realize that it's a long time. And to put that in perspective, I've known my wife longer than I haven't known my wife. And I remember when we were first dating, we were talking about this idea of, hey, kids, would you ever want to have kids? And my wife was always like, no, I don't want to have kids. And for me, I loved kids. I loved working with them. I work with kids still today because in my own heart, kids are the biggest hope for humanity because their parents may be a-holes, but the kids at least have the possibility of not turning out to be a bunch of a-holes. And in turn, my wife and I were dating, and I told her, I was like, oh. And this thought, it dawned on me. I was like, oh, you don't want to have kids because you don't like other people's kids. And she was like, tell me more. And I was like, well, uh, a lot of other people are a-holes and they raise little a-holes. And she's like, yes, yes. And I was like, but we're not a-holes. So why would we raise a-holes? And through that conversation, which was really formative in our marriage, like our marriage and being a parent, of realizing that we have the power to be able to hopefully make and cultivate good citizens out of our children, people, children that people actually enjoy, not tolerate. Um, and as we began to start having kids, we'd made a clear decision to not make Santa a part of their whole like childhood. And I've told people this, and it's funny, like my kids have told other kids this, and they're like, "Oh, you've grown up in such a hard life. You don't know wonder and magic without knowing the lies that are Santa Claus." And I also recognize that you may be listening right now in the car, on the radio here in Chapel Hill and Carborough, and your kids may have many questions. And I'm sorry, but I'm moving on. This is my radio show, so you probably should have turned it off way earlier if you had kids in the car. No, so we'd made this conscious decision to be able to tell our kids that Santa was not real. Like, Santa was never a thing in our household. Why? Because I didn't want to base our kids' trust in us as parents on lies. It was simple as that to me. Because for me, when I was a kid, I always thought the idea of Santa was just bizarre and weird. And I had family members and friends that were totally sold out into it. And I just remember me as just like a little snarky Stewart, kind of always going, none of this really makes sense. And I asked my parents, and they're like, yeah. And I think my parents are mainly happy because they didn't have to play the whole game that happens with Santa. Um, and so yes, like for us, for my wife and I, the whole thing was, if we are selling our kids lies, how will they know what is truth and what is lie? So again, background, Santa is not real, and Santa has never been real to any of our kids. And they've turned out pretty decent. Because again, we've got kids anywhere from ranging from 17 to 11 right now. None of them are sociopaths yet. I joke. But no, they've turned out to be very well-rounded humans that are good members of society. And I tell you all of that to get to this point. This comes just a few years back, where I was working on a church staff, and we're sitting around, and if you don't know this, when you have church staff meetings, that is really just code for a waste of time for a pastor to feel important about himself. Where every week we've got to have a staff meeting that involves prayer and involves blah blah blah. It's a huge waste of time. But it makes pastors feel important. And as we're waiting for the staff meeting to happen, some of the other staff were talking about, oh, we've got Elf on the Shelf. Oh, because again, like I apparently was the old dude on staff at the time. At least I had older kids. And so some of the other staff members started asking me, well, what do you do? We do Elf on the Shelf. We do all of this, to make Christmas magical. And they asked me that question. They said, so how do you handle all of this, Stuart? Or what did you do? Teach us. I think they were really just baiting me for an answer, because most of the time when people say, teach me, Stuart, they really don't want to hear the answer I have. And so I said, well, in all honesty, we've never wanted to lie to our kids. And we've always had this contract with our kids. I'll always tell you the truth. And if I don't want to tell you the fullness of my answer, I will say not right now. Meaning like if kids are asking for the ins and outs of sex when they're 4 years old, you tell them what they can handle at the time, but you tell them truthfully. And I told them that. I said, our whole goal, like mine and Miriam's goal, was to always be honest with them, so they knew to be able to trust our word. And they were like, huh, well, that must have not been very fun. And I was like, I don't know why you're saying it's not fun, because apparently lying is fun when it comes to Christmas. But what I told him this And I said this, and especially when you're working on a staff with Christians, and I said, well, tell me this. And this is one of the things that struck me early on as a parent. And I said, so you're going to tell them that Santa is real and they need to believe in all of this until they don't, right? Of course. Yeah, because it's the magic of Christmas and it makes us feel special and wholesome and wonderful and all this other kind of good stuff, right? I said, good. Okay. I understand you guys. But you also tell the children that Jesus is real, that God is a thing and God is real. Now, you can't see Santa. You can't see Jesus. You can't see God. So at some point, when you have kids that begin to realize the whole Santa thing was a lie, where does that stop in their own psychology from what mom and dad have told them? And it was one of those moments when you kind of say that, yeah, so you're saying that Santa's real and Jesus is real, but then at a certain age, Santa's not real, but oh boy, Jesus is real. And I told them that. I was like, it's a false dichotomy what you're laying out for your kids there. And they kind of just sat there and went, huh. In the way that I was reading there, was, that's interesting and it could be challenging, but I don't want to go there. I just want to continue to perpetuate the lie. And after that moment of those and a moment of silence, they went on to talking about how they make life wonderful and magical and full of lies for their children. Now, I know you're listening to a show called Snarky Faith, and you may be saying to yourself, oh my God, this guy's a Grinch. He's all about bah humbug. No, I'm not. I'm really just about what's true right now. And we live in a place, especially in these past 2 years, living under the shroud of the Trump administration, we've lived in a time where truth isn't truth anymore, where people lie constantly and get away with it. Now, I know everyone hopes that Mueller clause is going to do what Mueller clause is going to do when it comes to Trump. But, honestly, there's the real reality that Trump's BS will continue to win out over his voters. It continues to. They will doubt everything that the mainstream media says. They will doubt anything that doesn't jibe with their very thinly put together worldview that somehow Trump is the Messiah and that God is on his side. So you track with me so far. So we are, and this isn't just in the church. I feel like in America that we're dealing with an issue of truth that is paramount, but even more so, the church is dealing with problems of truth. You don't believe me? Well, let me tell you a few things. So remember here, we're talking about truth. And this article comes from Fox News. Yes, we are fair and balanced here on Snarky Faith. I just threw up in my mouth when I said that. But has anyone heard about this story that's going around about a South Carolina pastor that bought his wife a $200,000 Lamborghini? Lambo, $200K, rolling. That's right, Pastor John Gray of the Relentless Church, relentlessly ripping people off. Should be their motto. But yes, the Relentless Church in Greenville, South Carolina. Oh my goodness, he's coming under fire because he bought his wife a $200,000 Lamborghini, and this is a pastor? Huh? Yes, so initially this came out. Now, I will give him credit for not buying a private jet. So again, in ridiculous land of prosperity, hypocrisy, Christianity, he's a slight tier down from the private jet level, but I don't think that lets him off the hook here. And what's begun to happen has been very interesting, especially if you kind of follow the threads on social media, because the pastor and his church are pushing back. They're saying, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. This money wasn't brought from the church. No. It's from his book deals and his reality show, The Book of John Gray, which happens to be on the Oprah network." Oh my gosh. I'm a hypocrite. I shouldn't. No, I actually should. This dude is a pastor of a church. He is buying his wife a $200,000 Lamborghini. None of this looks like Jesus. And his wife had pushed back saying, you know, my hubby is a hard worker. He worked his whole life to save and bless his wife. Really? Blessing his wife? Because nothing says love like a $200,000 Lamborghini. And these people are doing their work. They are suffering for the gospel, suffering for Jesus in a Lamborghini. And when we talk about truth, in the realm of Christianity, the only thing you can say, per the FCC guidelines here on the air, is I cry BS on this. I cry BS. Because $200,000 and a pastor that continues to tell his church to give to the Lord and give to the Lord because the Lord needs you to give. Yeah. Why does the pastor not kind of follow the same message? Like, why does his wife need a Lamborghini? Fact of the matter is, she doesn't. And this whole thing is a sham. And any argument against it is running away from the truth of who Jesus is and was and taught us to be. So, yeah, do I cry foul on this? Abso-effing-lutely I cry foul on this. This is sick. This is ridiculous. But in our journey towards truth here, trying to figure out what's true and what's not true here in the realm of religion and spirituality here on Snarky Faith, that's going to lead me to one of your favorite things we do here on the air. The Christian Crazy of the Week. Here we go.
Lord have mercy. The Lord is my shepherd. He know what I want.
That's right. You've entered the space of the Christian Crazy of the Week. And we're bringing you some news from the Jim Bakker Show. Oh, I know it's low-hanging fruit, but it's so much fun. I just can't stop. Jim, I can't stop you. I can't stop you, Mr. Bakker. I just can't because it's just too much fun. And in the clip that we've got today, Jim had on his show Prophet, and I'm you can't necessarily hear this, but maybe that's my sound effect for making air quotes. Prophet Jeremiah Johnson, who's on the show speaking truth, speaking about prophecies and prayers, all about our good old Donnie J. Trump. That's right, Donald J. Trump. And we've been talking about so far in the show this whole idea of truth. So as you listen to this, and I will not play the whole thing because it's just too crazy, but I want you to kind of listen to this crazy sect of Christianity and how far and how wide they go to be able to stretch anything that could kind of seem like truth, but like they've stretched it beyond the limits. I could keep going on that, but you know what? Let's just go ahead and listen to the prophet here. So, Prophet Johnson, Brother Johnson, let us hear what you have to say. Speak it. Speak the word of God.
You have something to tell us about Donald Trump today. And you said that Donald Trump has an iron grip or something. What does that mean?
Yes, you know,
I read that about what you said.
Yeah, back in July of 2015, I had a prophetic experience concerning Donald Trump that was released. That word was released around the nation.
The prophetic word that was released around, I don't even know what that means. But again, stretching truth, sowing BS and lies. Continue!
I didn't really follow him a whole lot. I was later connected to Lance Wallnau and several others. But I had another series of dreams recently about Donald Trump, about an iron grasp that he had on the liberal agenda in America, that God was really going to use him to really squeeze out some things that needed to come out. But also it was a word of warning. You know, sometimes when we dream, we don't make it up. It's just whatever God says. And actually that grip was so tight that it worried some people. I felt like in the dream that maybe even pride could become a factor in the days ahead, that the church needs to be praying that the Lord has anointed Trump. He's given him kind of this authority in the nation. But sometimes when we grow successful, we can grow prideful.
So let me just go ahead and stop that right there. That because I had a dream one time. That I was surrounded by people that wanted to rob me. And instead of pulling out knives, they pulled out pickles. And the pickles were switchblades. Yeah, that was a weird, crazy dream. I've also had dreams about falling and going to school without having my homework, all that other kind of stuff. And just because you have a dream doesn't mean anything. But apparently with these guys, if you have a dream, it's the Lord speaking. Because what is this? That we want to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't become prideful. This is my best like mocking evil laugh. Maybe that was better. It's really just whatever it is that so from Donald Trump's success, the Lord is worried about Donald Trump becoming too prideful. Pride, the thing that he never had before, but now with his enormous success as president, which is approval rating through the roof. We're so worried, God's so worried that Donald Trump is going to become prideful, going to become prideful. I'm going to say that again for emphasis even here. Going to become prideful. So if you're actually breaking down the syntax of that statement, that really tells us that Donald Trump before was not prideful, but now the worry is he could become prideful. This guy that has fake gold buildings, that puts his name on everything. That guy, oh no, he may become prideful. Ooh. And yes, this is the thing that the prophet is saying. Do you feel truth being stretched beyond its limits? Do you feel truth being stretched so far? Okay, I keep saying stretched. I mean, this is just a freaking lie. This is just BS to their people. But come on. So I'm sorry, prophet. I'm mocking you right now, and you're speaking the word of the Lord. So I shouldn't do that, but I will. But let's continue so we can blow apart and mock the truth of whatever you were dreaming. Continue.
I just think it's real important that the church prays for Trump, that as his grip tightens on the nation, that good things come because of it.
Amen. That's a good word.
Amen, brothers and sisters. Amen. What a good word from the Lord. As Donald Trump begins to flex his iron grip over the country, like, I would assume if anyone has an iron grip, it would either be Melania over his balls or Robert Mueller over his balls. I'm not really sure, but what? And as we're talking about like stretching truth beyond all human reason and imagination, aka lying, we see folks, part of the Trump base, continue to tell each other these falsehoods. And as long as you said God said it, the mindless, moronic sheep that continue to give to Trump and or folks like Jim Baker, who's a crook, legally speaking, and probably metaphorically speaking, and any other way you can describe Jim Baker, crook always fits. what? Like, what? What? Like, what is happening here, Christianity? What is happening here? And I understand. I fully understand that I'm speaking about like the fringes of Christianity right now. But we are going to be talking about what happens when you begin to creep inside from the edges, from inside from the margins, inside from this. Because what's begun to happen within Christianity is we're all being sold a lie. It's almost like Donald Trump is Santa. He's not real, except he is real and a terrible excuse for a human being. And we see this. We see the Republicans buying lie after lie after lie. We see the church accepting lie after lie after lie. Because honestly, especially within folks in the religious right, if you say God's saying it, or if you somehow connect it to Scripture, even if it doesn't really connect to Scripture, they're going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. All of this is manipulation. And all of this has zero to do with God, has zero to do with Jesus, has zero to do with the heart of Christianity. Except when you look at it from pastors that buy Lamborghinis to the fact that Jim Bakker still has all of these crackpots on his show and folks listen and send in money. All of this is total BS. None of it is true. None of it is true. And if you wanna push back on me, which, dude, bro, push back, or bro-s, broina, push back. Go ahead, just push back on me, because guess what? In all of this that we've seen from the religious right, in all of this that we see that they continue to say, God's on Donald Trump's side. I mean, he's kind of a big dude. Like, he's, big boned and really filled out. So which side? He's got a lot of sides. I don't want to see his backside. I really would hope God's not around his backside, because that's just not pretty. It's not pretty. And what I'm saying here is none of this has to do with God. None of this. None of this. If you read between the lines, all of this has to do with human selfishness and greed. And that ends up being the state of where we are at within American Christianity by and large. Again, I will go ahead and preface this by saying not everywhere. There are tribes or groups that are actually doing good work out there. We try to highlight those here on the show. But for you to ignore the fact that Christianity has become about worshiping celebrity, look on the website, www.snarkyfaith.com. We've done a whole show on that. We've done shows on all of this hypocrisy. And it's surrounding Christianity right now, because none of this has to do with caring for those in need, feeding the poor. I mean, to continue to hear people make excuses within the Christian world about why we need more border security when we have children dying of dehydration once they have been taken in by our government. When we continue to hear stories about people shooting tear gas at mothers and children, and especially just lay that on top of the fact that we are in a Christmas season where folks in churches will be celebrating the birth of Jesus, the birth of a refugee, the birth of a child in a manger being a animal stable. So Jesus was the low of the low. Jesus's birth was really not observed by that many people. It was a blip on the map. Now, we celebrate it being able to say that God cares about us, that God cared about us so much that he would send his son into a place of poverty, a place of struggle, because that's the God that we follow. And when we talk about God in those terms, a God that cares about suffering, a God that cares about the least of these in our population, we're a God that cares about the marginalized. You know, that God, that kind of God, you know, that one, the God that's actually kind of in the Bible. When I say kind of, I mean actually in the Bible, you know, that God. But when we begin to see this like celebrity version of Christianity, when we begin to see this political arm of Christianity, there's really not much Jesus in there at all besides name. Besides name. And the thing that gives me the greatest hope in this season, and you're gonna laugh at me and say I am way too jaded and sarcastic and snarky, but you are listening to a show called Snarky Faith, so suck it. I'm the one with the microphone. I say that with love. But we enter into this season and we ignore who Jesus is. We enter into this season and ignore everything that Jesus taught us to do. We enter into this season and have folks that claim Jesus in churches on Sunday, but vote against people that are suffering on a regular basis. That Christianity does not gel with the real Jesus that existed or the teachings of Jesus. And that brings me to the greatest hope of the season. Is the fact that the church in America is dying. Yay! Oh, Stuart, you're a sadist. You're a sadist. Why are you talking about this in the most holiest of months where we go and spend and go into debt and blah, 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 right? Give us this moment. We may not go to church on a regular basis, but damn it, we're going to go on Christmas Eve and on Christmas, and we're going to remember what Jesus did for us in that moment because we really like the music and we like feeling good and we like feeling, I'm in the spirit of Christmas. But to honestly be in the spirit of Christmas means that you're out giving of yourself, giving of your pocketbook, helping those who are suffering, helping those who've been forgotten. So that leads me into the article that I wanted to talk about here this hour as we are kind of going through and skewering through and talking through the fact that Christianity has a big problem with truth. And this comes from a fantastic article that Newsweek had called Evangelical Christians Helped Elect Donald Trump, but their time as a major political force is coming to an end by Nina Burlig. And again, I realize I'm also speaking in an echo chamber here, so if you're probably listening to this show, you're going to agree with what I'm saying to begin with, and if you're listening to the show and are offended, you probably quit listening 2 seconds into the show. But I say this because it is a beautiful thing when you're able to see people bring together ideas and facts that we have really been talking about this show for the past so many years. And you're able to start seeing major publications of people talking about this stuff like it's true, because we're all about truth here. And in the article, I'm gonna hit some highlights that we're going through here, and let's talk here about numbers and stats. So the article says this: 20 years ago, just 46% of white evangelical Protestants were older than 50. Now, 62% are above 50. The median age of white evangelicals is 55. Only 10% of Americans under 30 identify as white evangelicals. The exodus of youth is so swift that demographers, that's a word, now predict that evangelicals will likely cease being a major political force in the presidential elections by 2024. Oh my gosh! This is your Christmas present, folks. This is Snark Nation! Let me say it again. The exodus of youth is so swift that demographers, that sounds way more classy. Demographers now predict that evangelicals will likely cease being a major political force in presidential elections by 2024. You see, what started with the founding of the religious right has burned brightly. Burned brightly and very orangely as it came to a culmination with Donald Trump. But now we are at a place where the cracks are showing. Now we are at a place where we're able to see the hypocrisy of all of this. And none of this has to do with Jesus. None of this has to do with Christianity. And all of this has been about me. And if you don't believe me, hey, www.snarkyfaith.com. We did an episode on this just a little while ago about the problem with selfishness in Christianity in America. and the cracks are showing. They are showing. Now, when you're sitting around the Christmas table with your racist uncle or mom or dad, whoever it is, you know, the one wearing the red hat, that's not Santa, who's a myth, they will push back saying, God is working with Donald Trump. Because they're going to spout out. What are they going to spout out? Oh, well, he gave us 2 new conservative Supreme Court justices. Right. He has a self-professed evangelical cabinet members. I mean, hell, look at Mike Pence. He's so holy, he's white. I mean, literally white, like a sheet that you could wear on your head in the shape of a point. He's that white. Yeah, I said it. And I'm not backing down off that either. And we've also seen that they can brag about the fact that they have tried to squash issues like abortion or LGBTQ rights or this, that, and the other. Because they will have their bragging rights. But I want to remind you that this is what Barry Goldwater predicted in 1994. He said this, mark my word, if and when these preachers get control of the party, and they're sure trying to do so, it's going to be a terrible damn problem. And Goldwater is saying it's a terrible damn problem for America, which it is. It is a terrible damn problem for us right now. But ultimately, you know, once the ride's over and the tank's empty, no more gas in the car, it's going to become a terrible damn problem for the church. And we're already seeing this. We're seeing a mass exodus of folks under 30 saying, is this Christianity? Wait. Is this Jesus? Is this it? Really? Is this what it's all about? And they say, if this is what it's all about, no, thank you. No, thank you. And I know folks inside the church, they will push back and say, well, we just have to work extra hard to be a-holes. We've got to work extra hard to be more judgmental because really that's all we've got in our wheelhouse. We've got to continue to work extra hard at this. But the problem is, it's not bringing these people back. It's not. Like, you know the statement, to beat a dead horse? That is American Christianity right now. The dead horse is being beaten. It's not moving. And the answer is to continue to beat the dead horse more. Now, when I say this, does that mean that the heart of biblical Christianity is dead? No, not at all. Not at all. Institutionalized Christianity? Oh, monetized Christianity? Capitalized Christianity? Materialized Christianity? Those ones? Yeah. They're not dead yet, and they're not dying soon enough. But your gift for Christmas, for me, is telling you that they are dying. Now, I know we're going to have folks like on the Jim Baker show that are claiming their prophets and saying, God's going to bring it back. Or we've made fun of people on so many past shows about saying, oh, there really was a red wave and not a blue wave. God's still here. He's moving. First of all, people, the fact that your faith has become so intertwined with politics is disgusting. I mean, in all honesty, if I'll just be totally upfront, if Christianity ceased to be in bed and doing tawdry things with politics, this show may not have a point anymore. And I am fully fine with that. If folks quit using Jesus to get rich and powerful, this show has no point anymore. And I'm totally fine with walking away from the microphone once that day happens. But it hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen in the next while. So we'll continue to do this. We will continue to point out how far Christianity has moved from its source. We will continue to point out the hypocrisy of Christianity. We will continue to point out the fact that this weird, sick, incestual relationship between religion and politics continues to corrode the religion part but feeds the politics, because politics is inherently corrupt. And we will continue to see that happen more and more. And that gives me hope. That gives me hope for a new day. Because how did all of this start? And I'm going to hop back to the article right now because we've talked about this on the show. But I want to remind you of this. They say this in the article. The Association of the Religious Right and the Republican Party has its roots in the 1954 Supreme Court ruling Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, after which white Southerners began to flee public schools following forced desegregation. They opened so-called segregation academies, religious schools that were tax exempt. When the IRS came after evangelical colleges like Bob Jones University, which officially prohibited interracial dating, the schools were faced with losing their tax-exempt status. You want me to just go ahead and spell that out in easier words? Yeah. The religious right and the Republican Party. Foundings of it? Racism. What? Racism in America today in 2018? Huh? Does that still happen? Yeah, you know it happens. And for all of these Christians to be sold out and just following blindly with the religious right, with the Franklin Grahams of this world that continue to spew hate and bigotry, they continue to move Christianity further and further from what it's supposed to be. Now, I say these things because in many ways, this can seem very, 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 very disconcerting. But what we've begun to see is that the youth of America, and I know many of you out there like to bash on millennials, but thank God for millennials, because millennials are saying, I've had enough of this crap with the church, and they are exiting. Because here's what I'm going to say from the article. So white evangelicals constituted 21% of the U.S. population when Obama was elected in 2008. 8 years later, in 2016, that number dropped to 17%. Today, white evangelicals make up 15% of Americans. I think, by and large, my hope is in the fact that Americans have had it up. They've had enough of this. They've had enough of this. Because the beauty, the absolute beauty, and I'm going to say this, that beautiful orange piñata of a president. You know, the guy with the really sad sweep over. You know, the guy that never graduated third grade English. You know, that guy, the one with the Twitter thumbs and the 10 wives and however many mistresses. You know, that guy, the golden boy for the evangelicals. Yeah, let that part continue to sink in because it still hasn't sunk in enough for me. But that guy shows us the ugliness of what happens when Christianity gets what it wants in the scope of power. I mean, you can look at it. You don't have to because it'll probably make you sick. But seriously, look at Trump and realize he's their absolute Messiah. He's their absolute Messiah. And I know people can say, well, a lot of folks just wanted to vote. They voted against Hillary. No. If you know folks in these spheres, if you know this, Trump is what they've wanted for so many years. And he's ugly, he's disgusting. I'm not even talking about physically. I'm just talking about ethically disgusting human being. He's a scumbag. And he's their poster boy. When it comes to truth, Trump has no idea. The biggest reason he will not sit down to do a one-on-one meeting with Mueller is because he's incapable of telling the truth. He's incapable of tweeting the truth. Truth is not something that he can comprehend in his small orange brain. And the sick thing is, the truth of the situation is, this is what white Christianity wanted. And I saw somebody today posting, hey, those numbers are off. Not that many evangelicals voted for Trump. You're giving us a bad rap. Screw you. Screw you is the answer. Screw you to the person that I know who has actually been on the show. Screw you. as I saw that posting it, screw you, and I actually mean that, and I will say that to the person's face. Because simply this, you saying, not all of us evangelicals voted for him, and I'm tired of being lumped in with them. Dude, this isn't about you. This isn't about you. This is about the loss. Christianity's huge losses. But the hope in all of this, and there is hope, is that Christianity will be forced to change. It'll be forced to adapt. It'll be forced to go back to its roots. And which this is brilliant. So if anybody knows who Brian McLaren is a very progressive voice within Christianity. And I'm going to just put this together, and you may not think it's funny. I think it's funny. And if not, just go with me here and just let me have my own internal giggle. Brian McLaren was interviewed recently by the Baptist News. That's a joke right there. That's hilarious right there. Because again, Brian McLaren, and to many, especially really conservatives, he's the boogeyman. Because Brian McLaren has pushed many different progressive ideas that God isn't the way we think God is, and that this really conservative, stodgy way of being able to view the Bible and everything is wrong. So the fact that the Baptist News is interviewing Brian McLaren is just hilarious in itself. So, but I want to go ahead and continue to give some of his words, and actually I'm going to give him more space towards the end of the show with more of his words. But I love this. I love this. He had said this. He said, everything that exists in a changing environment has to change in order to survive. That is one of Darwin's basic insights and is obvious in scriptures. When you think that we don't worship at rock altars and tabernacles anymore, change is inevitable in the spiritual life, and certainly in the life of our congregations. I would have to say I'm deeply worried in our congregations that too few of us will change fast enough, and I feel a sense of urgency. And when he was asked if churches had forgotten the reason they are here, here's what he said, and it's glorious and snarky, but I think he's actually being genuine. But sometimes the truth feels very snarky. He said this. He said, unfortunately, the reason they are here is to keep clergy employed and buildings open and donors happy. So this is Brian McLaren's assessment of why the churches have forgotten the reason they exist. Unfortunately, the reason they are here is to keep clergy employed, buildings open, and donors happy. If we go back to Jesus' life and teaching, he was modeling a way of life that was centered on love. And he sent his disciples out to form other disciples. And ultimately, I think that is what we should do. I think that is why we should be here, to form individuals and communities as agents for the love of Christ. What McLaren is saying this is that Christianity needs to get back to its roots. It needs to get back to the place where we are driven by, founded by, known by love. And when you think of the church in America, and when you think about this, because I know folks on the show, we've got folks that are in the church, out of the church, or even just agnostic or atheists, and I love all of you guys for being here and for just processing through whatever I process through here on the air every week. But does the church in America scream love? When we see Christians get power, do they seem to embody love? I mean, let me paint this more. And I won't even go as far as talking about Trump here. When you look at Mike Pence, when you see Mike Pence's record in Indiana, if you see what Mike Pence continues to speak about and do here as vice president, does any of that seem loving? Because I'll at least say this. Trump became Christian in name only to get voters and blah, 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 whatever that stuff. But Mike Pence has been devoted to this for years. When you look at Mike Pence, do you see love? Do you see a man that is compassionate and loving towards others? And we're not talking about compassionate and loving towards mother. No, I'm just talking about in general. Is his worldview, is his outlook, is what he's doing, is it driven by love, or is it driven by conformity or forcing people to be different in a Handmaid's Tale type of a way? Yeah, I think it's that more than anything. That mixed with and with a lot of repression. But I say all of these things, like McLaren was saying. I'm going to say this again. He said, I think this is why we should be here. This is why Christianity should exist. Not why it does exist now in America, but why it should exist. To form individuals and communities as agents of the love of Christ. And whether or not you agree with Christianity as a whole, or American Christianity, or all the other kind of stuff, if you go back and read the words of Jesus, Jesus was driven by love. He told his followers to be driven by love of God and love of everybody else. And it was a type of love that we don't often see in this world. We like to look at romantic love, or I love a taco, or the way we talk about love ends up being very just fluffy and empty. No, Jesus talked about a self-sacrificial love, a love that said, I need to be able to give of myself to be able to help others. And as we continue to see how our government just doesn't give a crap about the environment, God's creation, let me remind you in Christian speak, that we don't care about that anymore. When we don't care about the suffering of others, when we don't care about the suffering in other countries, when we don't care about any of that, we only care about money, we only care about wealth, we only care about power. That's not Christianity. That's not Jesus. And I wish there was ways we could work the lexicon, and we could work the way we use language and words. But again, the people that most likely associate themselves with Jesus would call themselves Christians, even though they're not individuals and communities that act as agents of love. And that's incredibly sad, especially when we're moving into a season where most people are going to be professing, oh, this is about the birth of Jesus. We want to celebrate Jesus. We love him. We will sing songs about jingle bells and away in the manger, and come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us ignore him. That kind of an idea. So if we like tiny little golden baby Jesus, and that's the little baby Jesus we like to worship, but we don't like the challenging adult Jesus that called us to be self-sacrificial, that called us to love at all costs, that called us to go into the hurt and the broken places, to go and find those that are being ignored and marginalized and forgotten. That Jesus. That one we ignore on Christmas because it doesn't feel nice and fuzzy. It doesn't feel or taste like eggnog. It tastes like suffering. It tastes like sacrifice. I much prefer eggnog in this season. See, Christianity needs to get back to this place where we focus on truth. And the truth of the matter is, if you're going to say that you're a Christian, which you want to boil down what does Christian mean, it should mean the word little Jesus, little Christ. That's the etymology behind that word. Do Christians in America look like little Jesuses? Or do we look like a bunch of privileged, uppity, judgmental a-holes that continue to do horrible things in the name of Jesus? But just because you do something in the name of Jesus does not mean you're doing it with Jesus. It just doesn't. So if we want to return to truth about Christmas, we need to stop lying to ourselves like we lie to our kids about Santa. We need to be absolutely truthful with ourselves and say, am I really being Jesus in a way that is impacting the world around me? Am I loving others? Am I giving of myself? Am I being self-sacrificial? Are the things I'm doing building up a building? Is the money I'm giving just paying for a pastor to continue to have his job? Or is what I'm doing and what I'm giving making a difference in the world? Is there less suffering? Even a small amount. Is there a small amount of less suffering in this world? Because I've followed the ways and the teachings of Jesus. Because if we claim to follow Jesus, and we are not making the world a better place. We're not really following Jesus. And if your version of making the world a better place means conformity and means rules, and it means you standing in a position of power and forcing others to do something, that's not Christianity. It's not Jesus either. Just not. And I'm here to kind of be truthful and kind of be honest with you about it. I would rather a bunch of Christians just form a different club and come up with a different name that has nothing to do with Jesus and just let them go about their merry way. But the sad fact of the matter is I come back here week after week because I call BS on this. Well, that's all I've got this hour. Thanks so much for joining us. And as we end this broadcast, just a reminder that you can catch us on podcast at www.snarkyfaith.com. And I send you out with the holiest amount of grace and peace and snark. I'm out of here.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all of life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be a better day than today.